I'm going to move at a brisk pace throughout this webinar just because I know that your time is very valuable, but also know that I am going to be recording the webinar to make it available for you and others in your organization to view at their convenience. And we'll be available at the end for questions as well as individual conversations with you about you and your needs and any of the information that I'm presenting today. So just a little bit about me. It's Judith Kirkness here, and I'm one of the partners at Minotaur Software. We have over 30 years experience, and I myself have over 25 years experience helping food manufacturers automate their businesses. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I wrote a book called The Traceability Factor. Now I've become a little bit of an educator with relationship to traceability, technology, and I hope to share some of what I've learned with you today. So just a bit on today's agenda. We're going to be talking about automating your inventory control. We're going to talk about the standards that are in use by the industry today, as well as the future of information sharing, where things are headed, and how to prepare your company to meet the coming standards. So let's get right into it. As a food manufacturer, of course, many of you are GFSI certified already. What that means is that you're required to have one step up and one step down traceability. Now, there's a lot of information on this screen. Most of the slides will not be this information heavy. I'll try not to read the slides, but really just talk to the material in a relevant way. So this is simply a quote from the GFSI standard on what all of the different standards under GFSI must ensure that those qualifying companies can do. So you've got to be able to trace all your raw materials coming into your facility. You've got to be able to trace where and when you used all of those, or when you disposed of them. And then finally, you've got to be able to trace all of your products going out to your customers. So this is the current standard. This is what all GFSI registered companies are supposed to be able to do. One up, one down. So the different schemes have chosen to interpret this standard a bit differently. If you're certified under BRC, but not SQF, at least currently, you've got to achieve that traceability within 4 hours. The opposite, if you're under SQF, but not BRC, you're required to record all of that one up, one down information about your packaging materials as well. Of course, if you're under SQF, then just at the beginning of last year, they announced that 1 in 3 of their on-site audits was going to be unannounced. So that got people a little bit scared, because a lot of times what would happen is when they knew the audit was coming, they might throw bodies at any information requests. So they'd bring in the night shift, they'd bring in the afternoon shift, they'd get people there, and if the auditor asked them questions that they couldn't readily get the information to, they'd get a bunch of bodies on that to try and get the information as quickly as possible. Of course, when an audit is unannounced, you don't have the luxury of being able to have people at the ready to help compile information. Now, the CFIA is actually one of the most lenient in allowing you 24 hours to put together that one up and one down information. But the bigger question is, how long will your customers give you to put together this recall information? Often it's a lot less than 24 hours. Now, one of the things is GFSI says you have to have it, but GFSI doesn't say how to get it. So what we have found is that many manufacturers are still using paper-based traceability systems, or paper-based that ultimately gets entered into a spreadsheet or some other non-verified traceability system. Now, the goal, of course, ultimately is to create supply chain traceability, which allows for a life cycle and entire history of any given ingredient to be compiled should there be any problems or questions about that ingredient. That's the end goal of where things are going. There's really 2 approaches that the industry is taking to achieve supply chain traceability, and I'm talking about that because what this end game is will affect what you at your individual company do to track this information. So the 2 main approaches that are being taken in the industry to achieve supply chain traceability are what I like to call, first, the giant database approach, and second, the electronic information protocol approach. So don't worry, I'm going to define both of those right now. So the giant database approach is how live animal tracking has gone at approaching the traceability problem. So for live animals in Canada, there are various agencies, and ultimately there will be one agency where farmers, transporters, basically all the people along the supply chain up until the animal kill floor are going to be submitting information to a giant database that the government is going to manage, and that will have an entire history of that animal from when it was born through to when it was expired at the primary meat processor. So that's the approach that they're taking with live animals. With live animals, that seems to be like it can work. It's those are big databases, but they seem to be able to track each individual animal. The IFT in the U.S., which is the equivalent to the CIFST in Canada, has been working on the project of supply chain traceability for many years now. They looked at the giant database approach, and they deemed that it was not a feasible approach for all items in all food processing areas. While hard drive space is cheap, the amount of information was just overwhelming, plus they knew they wouldn't get buy-in very readily from the processing community to basically send them all of their information. And so what they are working on right now is what we would call an information protocol. So they're going to come up with a way that food processors need to have information available so that should there be a problem with an item either you produced or one of your suppliers produced, that a supply chain history could be compiled for a given item. So they're not going to maintain it at all times. They're only going to access information from you when there's an actual incident that they are investigating. So the big thing, though, is what's common between the two approaches, the giant database or having your information in a certain electronic database that could be queried by government or by your customers should they be investigating a food safety issue, is that both of those will require that your information be available in an electronic format. So given that that is the direction, and they're just really working on finalizing what that protocol will look like, I suspect that there will be electronic record-keeping mandated as after that protocol is released. So until the protocol is finalized, what can you be doing to get your company ready for this? Well, the first one is what you're doing right here today, which is educating yourself on the available protocols that are in use right now, because likely the future protocols will be very much based on what's already out there and already possible. So I suggest that you focus on what's in it for your company and your customers when it comes to adopting technology, knowing in the back of your mind that these regulations will be coming to make information available. So what protocols am I going to be talking about today? Well, basically, I'm going to be talking about EDI. I'm going to be talking about GS1-128 and at the case and, of course, at the Skid level, what information is available there, and MH10 labels, which are a Skid label serialized identification. So these are protocols, basically. They're standards that are available that can be used across the industry and be read and interpreted by a number of different systems. So we like to call that system agnostic, meaning basically you can have a system in your facility that is different than the computer system used in another facility, but using these standards, you can communicate information effectively between you. So we're going to start with the EDI standard. So EDI, electronic data interchange, is a method of sending information between two partners. So it's non-banking information. It's not monetary. You're not sending money. This is just other kinds of information that you might exchange between two companies. So they call them partners in EDI because it could be you exchanging information with your customers, but it could also be your suppliers exchanging information with you. It could be you exchanging information with your third-party warehouses, or it could be used between one of your own operating companies and another of your own operating companies. So that's why they call the two parties that are communicating the messages partners. Now, all EDI documents are numbered, and there's certain information that can be transmitted in a standard way through these different documents. So a lot of you may be familiar with, in retail, you might receive an 850 a purchase order from your customer electronically. You might, in turn, after you might acknowledge the receipt of that order through a 997 functional acknowledgement. Once you ship the order, you may be providing an 810 invoice document to your customer so that you're not sending a paper invoice, you're actually invoicing them electronically. And there's a whole slew of different numbered documents that you could use to communicate back and forth between two parties in this standard way. Now, when we talk about EDI, there's really two ways that you can do EDI. EDI requires, kind of like Canada Post's e-post, it requires an electronic mailbox. So basically, electronic documents get deposited in a mailbox for your partner. The partner picks up that document and reads and interprets it, and then might respond to you and put something in your mailbox for you to pick up. So there's two ways that people are creating these EDI documents. One of them is through an online service. So you might be typing documents into a portal of a service that you pay a monthly fee to be able to access, and your customers or partners can send you, and they can interpret and send you what those EDI documents are saying. So basically, they're performing two tasks. They're not only your electronic mailbox, but they're also providing you with software that can allow you to generate these documents. The other way is if you already have software, such as Minotaur's ERP system, which can create its own electronic documents. Then you only need the mailbox service or the VAN, the value-added network provider, and you can generate those documents or read those documents directly into your ERP system. So the benefit of doing that as opposed to the online service is, of course, that you're reducing duplicate entry. If you have an accounting package and it's disconnected from your online EDI portal, you have to enter your invoice once into your accounting and once again into the portal. That, of course, gives opportunity for error and is double the time it takes to create an invoice. So, these are the two ways. If you have it integrated into your program, well, then you have the benefit of that reduced time entry and fewer chances for error. So we're going to go over a quick lesson in barcodes, and this is important because understanding the standard and what information can be communicated, it's important to understand what information comes across in a barcode. So basically, any sequence of numbers or letters can be made into a barcode. So this particular barcode you're seeing on your screen is just basically encodes the word barcode certified. Now, a barcode is only useful if it can communicate information that can be understood in a useful way. So this particular barcode is not particularly useful. If you scanned it with a scanner, it would tell you barcode certified. But what does that mean? What do I want to do with it? That's where software is required to interpret the barcodes. So GS1, which is known as the Global Standards Organization, is a worldwide organization. It's in over 100, I think it's over 140 countries actually, that have adopted the GS1 standard. GS1 is actually a nonprofit industry-led organization, and in all of the countries that they operate in, there's individual websites, and then there's also the world website. And these are the folks that first introduced the idea of a UPC over 40 years ago. And so they are the ones that you can go to get official UPCs so that you have a unique number that identifies your finished good products, and that number can be useful around the world. So are you registered with GS1? Well, if you are a manufacturer that sells to retailers or to food service distributors, then your finished goods, those items at least, are typically registered with GS1. And so distributors are typically using the manufacturer-supplied information, manufacturer-supplied GS1 barcode numbers, but suppliers and others may not be registered with GS1, and it is not mandatory to register with GS1. It is just an opportunity to ensure that any number that you use will be unique. So in Canada, we have something called the ECCnet, which is basically our national catalog of items manufactured in Canada that are registered with GS1. Now, it's an interesting thing because it allows a manufacturer to set up a number once with GS1 with all of the specifications about that particular product. So, the size, what it looks like, a picture, all of that good stuff. Then if they're going to deal with multiple retailers, they only have to allow those retailers access to see that information about their products. And therefore, they set it up and maintain it in one spot, and all of their customers who need that information for planograms or various other, ordering information, all of that, they can access it directly. So it's a great registry when dealing with those major retailers. Now we're going to talk very briefly about the retail barcodes. These are ones that you're probably very familiar with. In the grocery store, you'll see that the produce stickers contain what's called a stacked barcode, and that's simply for space-saving purposes. But within that stacked barcode, and within all of those UPC or otherwise called GS1-128 barcodes, is actually encoded a supplier prefix that you get assigned when you first sign up for GS1. Then there's also the item code that you as a company have assigned to that number encoded in there. So basically the two pieces of information that are available to any software program from any of these types of numbers, well, actually only from the ones that are the GS1 numbers, which would be the little tags for fruit, and then of course the UPC GS1-128 barcodes. Those can give a computer software program information about what supplier it is and what item number it is. That's all they give. Notice that there is nothing encoded into those barcodes that talks about traceability. We don't know what lot this was. We don't know when it expires. We simply know what item it is, and if we have software that could link up to GS1, we could know what supplier is providing. So a lot of times you have to watch that labels may, in fact, include information handwritten of the product that is not, in fact, encoded in the barcode. So if we're going to use electronic tracking, it's very important to understand what information is encoded in the barcodes. In the deli example, in fact, there's nothing about the supplier because these are just used internally in a given store. It simply has the item code and either the price or weight embedded into it. So when you get up to the cash, it can scan that item and know how much to charge you. Now, if you want to find out, I've put in the corner here the website you can go to if you want to just take a look at registered GS1 barcodes and find out who that supplier prefix is. You can go and look up those numbers, and the GS1 website will tell you. Now that we've done the barcodes that are on retail units, let's back it up a step, because most of the suppliers of products to, say, a retailer, they won't sell a given package of granola bars, for instance. They will only sell a trade-level item. And so when we look at the barcodes on trade-level items, they are 14 digits, so a little bit longer than the ones that you see in grocery. And often these barcodes are printed permanently on the sides of different cases so that the company doesn't have to, use a label printer each time. However, note again that similar to the GS1-128, there is nothing about traceability in those barcodes. This simply identifies the item that, and at a lower level on the GS1 website, it identifies what's inside that case. So it's unique. It's a unique number if it's registered with GS1. It contains your company prefix, as you can see down at the bottom, and then you assign it an item number. Within that, for this little picture that I put, it's saying that number represents 12 cans of whatever's inside. that's all that this barcode is able to convey to us. There might be human-readable information also on that case, but it's not anywhere that a scan could pick up. Now we're going to go one step further again. Now let's look at the skids. So GS1 has these has standard different barcodes. You know, we talked about the G10-12. We talked about the G10-14. Well, there's one a GS barcode called the SSCC18. So it's up to 18 digits long, and it again contains the supplier prefix, and then it is simply a serialized number. So if you were starting to use these, you'd probably start at 1 and just work your way up from there. It's a barcode that would be put on a skid level, and it really is meaningless unless your partner knows what is on that particular skid. And I'm going to talk about how they could know that information. But in and of itself, just sending someone a serialized label, well, they can scan it and they get the numbers at the bottom of the label and nothing else. So that in itself is not valuable to someone. So the reason we're talking about these SSCC codes is because Loblaw in particular, and possibly many others in the future, food service providers, McDonald's is asking for these. So a lot of the suppliers are working their way towards asking you to put a skid label on your skids. Now, as I say, the skid label itself is useless unless they know what it corresponds to. So right now, Loblaws in Canada is asking, most suppliers that supply to their distribution center to provide them with a label that looks similar to this. And and the serial numbered SSCC is at the bottom of that. Now, what happens is that you as the manufacturer or supplier to Loblaw would put this on a particular skid, then you would send them an EDI document called an ASN, an Advanced Shipping Notice. That document would contain all the details telling them what is on the skid with that serial number. So this one is 82357 at the end of the serial number. The electronic document would say, on skid 82357, you will find 80 cases of product ABC of lot number, ABC123. So the interesting thing is that Loblaw is actually asking you to send them electronically the lot numbers of products contained on their skids when shipping to their distribution center. So now that we understand some of those standard barcodes, we're going to go to my favorite barcode. And yes, I have a favorite barcode. It's the GS1-128 barcode. And so this is the industry standard barcode that allows you to communicate multiple pieces of information in a single scan. So if you look at this barcode, you'll see that there's little brackets mixed within the numbers of the barcode. And so there's an actual, there's a list of 99 possible segments that you could use to put together one of these fancy barcodes. And GS1 has defined how the lengths of those particular fields. They've defined the structure of the field, and they make that available so that people can use this format to create barcodes that they can use to both scan internally in their own facilities, but also to make available to their customers on any of their finished goods, so their customers can use whatever information they've encoded in their particular barcode. So in this particular case, an O2 segment, I know because I know the list, and I'm going to direct you as to where to find this application identifier list for yourselves so that you could go into your own warehouse and start decoding some of the barcodes that your suppliers are sending to you. I know that an O2 is actually a G10-14 code. So that's what is within the O2 segment. The 10 segment is a lot or batch number. And the 15 segment is one of the many date options. In this case, it's a best before date. So with one scan and a system that can interpret the segments within this barcode, you can gather the information of what's the product code, what's the expiry date, and what's the lot number. So that's why these are such important barcodes, is because they allow you to transmit traceability information. Oh, here's another example. In this case, this is an example that might be on a case of meat, for instance. It's got a weight in there. Oh, no, sorry, it's got it's got a date in there, which is a different date. The 17 segment is the expiry date. I apologize. The best before date was the 15 above. And so, to me, those are very similar dates. 425, I believe, is the country of origin code. So there's a lot of, and 21 is a serial number. So a serial number as opposed to a lot number. The only difference between serial and lot numbers is that a serial number typically has a one-to-one relationship, whereas a lot number could have many to one. So you could have lot number ABC123, and there could be 50 cases with that same lot number. If it's a serial number, that is not typically the case. So in order, as I said, in order to interpret those barcodes, you have to have a piece of software that's able to parse that barcode and extract into their database the different pieces of relevant information. So it's important to realize that the GS1-128 is a symbology, and by that I mean that even if you haven't registered for GS1, you can use this format internally in your own company or for items that are not going to make it to retail, that kind of thing. It's a symbology you can adopt that allows for your customers to understand the information you sent and for you to use information and grab traceability information electronically with scanners. So if you have a system that can read and interpret this symbology, then you're able to grab as much information as you wish to put in those barcodes in a single scan. So if you're trying to design your own GS1-128 barcodes that your customers might use for scanning into their computer systems, you might have to decide which segments you want to put in your barcode. Well, typically you're going to put an item code for sure. If you're a meat company or using catch weight, you'll probably want to have a weight field. A lot or serial number absolutely is necessary for traceability, and likely at least one of the date fields. It may be that if you're exporting, you want to add in that country of origin. And as I say, there are 99 segments, so there's so much more you could put into the barcodes. But the more information you put into a barcode, the wider it becomes. And so, at least to be scanned legibly. So you only want to really put in there what's necessary for you and what's necessary for your customers. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how products are recalled from trade, and that's important because information within a GS1-128 barcode can come into play in recalls that you are receiving. So when XL Recall in Canada had their giant recall in 2012, to consumers, you can see that here's a little capture from the website of the government of how they recalled information and told consumers what not to use. So they were saying to the consumers, if you bought from Sobeys, if it was extra lean ground beef, if the UPC started with this, and if the best before date was between these two dates, then we're recalling it. But to trade, they didn't recall that way. And because it was a serialized meat case, every single case had a different weight, so a different unique serial number. They did not recall based on serial number. They recalled based on the packed on date. They basically said everything packed on these various dates we are recalling. So if you had a traceability system that could allow you to search your database for items packed on a particular date, meaning they extracted that from the scanned inventory, then you were able to quickly determine yourself where you used those, where it went, and was able to conduct your own recall for products that you had made or resold from XL. Now, a lot of people will be saying, well, isn't there a lot of better alternatives out there to barcodes? And the answer is yes, there are alternatives, technology alternatives, which have more successful read rates. A 2D barcode is on the left. There's two examples, and you can see that the 2D barcode at the bottom is actually using the GS1-128 symbology. So embedded into this square 2D barcode is an 01 segment, which is a GTIN, a date segment, and a lot number. So you can see that the symbology can make its way into different pieces of technology that you might want to use to store the information. So a 2D barcode does have a higher read rate than a 1D barcode. And many scanners today can actually scan 1D, 2D, and sometimes even RFID all within the same scanner. So you have the flexibility to choose internally what's best for your facility. But the important thing to remember is that unfortunately the 1D barcode is still the most recognized and used barcode across the industry. So, you know, it's not just about what you'll put on your finished goods. It will also be what your customers will want, and there may be many customers who will be looking for a 1D barcode. The RFID tags you'll see on the right, the one at the bottom, the yellow one, that's actually an RFID tag that's placed on cattle in Canada. So RFID also has quite a successful read rate, and they can be in this case, you know, put on animals in harsh, wet environments. You know, the animals, wet, messy, and that tag stays on. Unlike most labels, this is something that they have found to work. So RFID, again, you can still use the same symbology that you might use within your own company, but put it on a tag, put it on an RFID label. For your internal purposes, again, you may end up putting an actual 1D for external purposes of your customers' needs. So when we talk about inventory control for food companies, it really can't be separated from lot control and expiry dates. And the reason I say this is because if you are, say, planning production and you make a fresh product, and you know in your inventory system that you have, 50 cases of strawberries in stock. Well, it may be that some of those are about to expire, or some of those may already have expired. So just knowing a count of what you have in a system is not sufficient for food manufacturers today. The second thing is that Walmart and some of your other customers may have special restrictions on what product they can accept from you. So FIFO is first in, first out, and it's a method that was typically used by many inventory programs to ensure that you turn your inventory over. And it makes sense, right? If it was first in, you want it to be first used or first out. However, people like Walmart have kind of made that They've totally turned that upside down. And how they've done that is a lot of times Walmart will say to you, I will only accept product from you that is within 75% of shelf life. So if they say that, then FIFO may not be good enough, because the lot that they want to send you to pick just based on FIFO might be too old to satisfy that criteria of Walmart. So you can see that it's important not just what lot, but often what expiry date your products have in order for you to satisfy some of your customers' criteria. So, introducing technology is the direction that most food manufacturers are working on to try and meet the stricter record-keeping and speed requirements of the government and GFSI and most importantly, your customers. So that's the direction that people are going, and likely the direction will be mandated in the not-too-distant future. So here's a summary of what we've talked about today, and that's that full chain traceability is the goal that government and industry are working together to try and achieve. And so part of that will be the electronic storing of information about the traceability information, one up, one down, about every ingredient or product input you receive, everything you produce, and everywhere that you send it. So those pieces will ultimately be needing to be available electronically. There are some great protocols, EDI, GS1 protocols, that you could be employing right now, because I'll tell you, on the committee developing the protocol for supply chain traceability, GS1, Walmart, all of those people are on that committee, and so no doubt GS1 standards will form a big part of what this protocol will look like. Talking about the Minotaur Solution. So what the Minotaur Solution allows you that full, with our warehouse management, we're reading and interpreting all of those GS1-128 formatted identifiers. And so that allows you to capture and store the information electronically using plant floor, weigh scales and labels, labeling equipment, using tablets for entering information on the floor, as well as using scanners. And so that's that's it. I hope that that this has been valuable for you, and now you understand where things are going and how we at Minotaur can help you get there. So if you have any questions, I'll take a quick peek at the live chat, but if there's nothing, then I hope that you'll feel free to call me with any of your questions. And as I say, this is being recorded, and so I will send you a link to the recording if there is others at your organization that might benefit from viewing it.